Hello and welcome to Strive Dialogues. Today we are going to discuss about the third aircraft carrier which is to be inducted into the Indian Defence Forces, to be precise in the Indian Navy. What are the pros and cons? What are the ifs and buts? Should it be included, not included? Should it be procured or not procured? Are we ready to spend 40,000 crores, which would amount to which would amount to almost a yearly capital budget of all the three services? These are many questions which are in front of the planners and the both planners as well as the users or the uh, Indian Navy in particular and the Indian Defence Forces in general. Worldwide, we have 41 big and small aircraft carriers, out of which 11, the big ones, are with the Big Daddy Uncle Sam, United States of America. Then we have two of them which are there with China and UK, and China is already going ahead with the third one. I think third one is about to be launched. Fujian is the name of that, and overall they have a plan to make six carriers. So that means almost half of what the slightly more than half of the US fleet. India, France, Russia are and Italy are having two aircraft carriers. In addition, you have the smaller, what they call as hello carriers, the small aircraft carriers. The Japan force, France three, Australia two, Egypt two, Brazil one, South Korea one, Thailand also one. Very surprisingly, but these are all very small carriers, and they really do not, in any major way, are contributing towards power projection, so to say. They are more into the defensive and the surveillance and other kind of roles. So with that as the background, we have today with us our guest, Commander Sudarshan Chakrapani. He has been on our show previously, also a submariner, and surprisingly I came to know today that there are aircraft carriers which are also doing submarine hunting. So over to you, Sudarshan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Dushyant. It is a pleasure to be on Strive and, of course, a pleasure to be with you, especially. Now,
Thank
very
you.
frankly, you must understand the rationale of the Navy before we get into the aircraft carrier itself.
Yeah.
Just think of it. If you go back a little while, if England or Britain ruled the world, it ruled the world because of its Navy. And why
Correct.
did it rule? What was the Navy's role? Look at the map of the world. You will find every narrow passage had Britain sitting there.
Yeah.
Start from UK, getting into the Mediterranean Sea, you had the Straits of Gibraltar, Britain. In the middle of Mediterranean Sea, Malta, Britain. Move from Mediterranean Sea into the Indian Ocean side through the Red Sea, Suez Canal, Britain. Go further down, Aden, again Britain. Go further down, come into India, south of India, in Ceylon, as they called it then, otherwise Sri Lanka, again Britain. From there, if you go further down into towards the Pacific Ocean, you have to cross the Malacca Straits. And who are sitting in Singapore? Back to Britain. Okay, you don't want to come through this Red Sea, you want to go around Africa at the Cape of Good Hope. Who was sitting? Back to Britain. While they did nothing in South America, but in the Caribbean, it was back to Britain. Effectively, every narrow passage which had any trade going through, and all trade in the world has to go through these narrow passages, you had Britain sitting there, and that is how they controlled the trade, controlled the world. Therefore, you can look at the Navy as a strategic force multiplier, a strategic force which is intended to deter tomorrow's war as much as it is intended to fight today's war. That is where you came up with this great term called gunboat diplomacy. A
Yeah.
naval ship can be as close to the enemy as 12.01 miles. It is just outside its territorial waters. It can do whatever it feels like there, so long as it does not fire a missile towards the other
Yeah.
side. Now, why 12 miles? because in the days of the old, 12 miles was the range of
Right.
the eye, and the earth would curve away, and therefore you could only see 12 miles. That is why
Yeah.
territorial waters were 12 miles.
Yeah. Uh,
That's the reason why you have naval ship. It doesn't matter which navy. For them, even for Indian Navy, even the US is our neighbor because I can travel as close as 12 nautical miles there under a doctrine which is called freedom of the seas. So
okay.
long as I'm making an innocent passage, I cannot be stopped.
Correct.
Right? That is the objective. Now, fast forward into today's world. In
Mm-hmm.
today's world, if you look at the Indian Ocean region, almost 60% of the world's trade happens here.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Straits of Malacca is the bottleneck or the chicken's neck equivalent for all the army people who love that aspect of chicken's neck and how it can choke India. The Straits of Malacca is the chicken's neck equivalent for China.
That's
China
right.
is doing its best to avoid the Straits of Malacca. They came up with a great plan across the Kra Isthmus and say we'll build a canal there. India and US leaned on Thailand and said nothing doing. That plan was shelved. The
Correct.
BRI is designed to avoid the Malacca dilemma as far as China is concerned. No wonder China is spending so much money in Gwadar, in Karachi ports, and linking it up through very difficult terrain through the Karakoram Pass into China. Look at the other aspect of BRI, connecting Europe to China. Right? It is trying to avoid the Malacca dilemma in whichever form it can. Therefore, what is India's topmost requirement? India's top requirement is to preserve the Indian Ocean region because that we consider to be our backyard. Who's threatening here? Back to China. If you look at the map again, you will notice just outside our exclusive economic zone in the North Arabian Sea, you have a little over 150 Chinese fishing vessels there, as recently reported as yesterday or day before.
You can see the cursor where I am pointing out. That's the area.
Yeah, that's correct. That's where they are. Now tell me, a small fishing boat about 30, 40, 50 meters in length, do you think it can come all the way from China and into the western or into our Arabian Sea to fish? Obviously not. Chinese are famous or infamous for using fishing boat as their militia to threaten whosoever they want. And so
Paramilitias.
long as they keep outside the 200 nautical miles limit of the exclusive economic zone, they can fish as much as they want, and India can do nothing about it unless they do something called espionage or gathering intelligence and things like that, which directly threatens India. Even there, we'll find it difficult to prove they were doing it. Therefore, it is the seas, and no wonder Alfred Thayer Mahan, who was one of the great naval thinkers, had 100 years plus mentioned whoever rules the Indian Ocean will rule the world in the 21st century. That is where we are today.
So this is the Indian Ocean.
This is the Indian Ocean region, or IOR for short.
Okay.
If you look
Uh,
at this region, you will find that India is at the most advantageous position.
correct.
India can deploy its forces without a hesitation. Nobody to stop. While China cannot get out into freely into the Pacific Ocean because Taiwan is sitting there as a part of the first island chain. The second island chain will cover Philippines, Japan, Korea, South Korea, China. That way is boxed in, which is where the geopolitical importance of Taiwan comes in for China. The Malacca Straits is a problem for China. They are trying the Sunda Straits and further down south through Philippines, but Philippines is not taking kindly to it.
Yeah, somewhere
No
here.
wonder they're trying their best to get into Hambantota in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
They're already sitting in Djibouti. Gwadar, Karachi is with them. They are thinking or they are trying their best to get somehow. Djibouti is up north, further north. Yeah, close to the Horn of Africa.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And they were sitting in Bangladesh. They're getting a port in Myanmar. And they've got Humban Tota on a long term lease because of what is called as the checkbook diplomacy and the debt trap. So, what does India do? India needs to be able to safeguard its own maritime interests, safeguard its own shipping. Therefore, we need to be able to project power not just on our coastline, but well outside our coastline, which is where comes the deterrent to the string of pearls, which is called the necklace of diamonds. India has got ports or interests further outside the necklace, the string of pearls, so that we can control the string of pearls itself. That is what we are trying to do. And for that, among the best ways to project your power is an aircraft carrier. Because an aircraft carrier does not go alone, it goes along with a complete fleet, which could be three to four destroyers, three to four frigates, maybe a few more ships, which would act as replenishment or whatever else is required. And by themselves, a aircraft carrier group is probably more powerful than many navies put together. Today, we have two aircraft carrier groups, one for the East Coast, one for the West Coast, if you will, broadly dividing it up.
Yeah.
But we do not have a carrier in case any one of them is into refit or is into a typical maintenance because an aircraft carrier cannot keep floating forever. Don't forget, it is steel, metal in a very corrosive solution, the seawater. It does need maintenance, right? It's a complex machine. Therefore, you need a third aircraft carrier. I'll stop here initially, Dushyant, as the first few lines, and then we'll take it as the questions come.
Yeah. My first question to you is, which is normally the question which is raised by many people in the strategic community, and that is that due to the changing nature of warfare, which is happening all around us, warfare shifting towards the multi-domain warfare, towards gray zone, towards information war, they are taking more and more center stage than the conventional wars. uh, People question that, do we really need to invest so much into the aircraft carriers? In fact, there was in between a plan by the US also to scale down its aircraft carriers. The Russians almost sold off every aircraft carrier of theirs. They sold two to China, one to India. In fact, two to India twice. And so therefore, they are left with now only one aircraft carrier, Admiral Kunskov. I think that's the one which they
Kuznetsov.
have. Yeah, Kuznetsov. That is the one which they have now with them. So, if Russia is only doing well with one, or trying to manage with one, why is there a need for a 40,000 crore worth of investment for the third aircraft carrier? Compulsive reasons, I would say, unchallengeable reasons why India should go in for this. In quick point form, if you could highlight that.
Sure, Dushyant. Let's look at what constitutes national power. The
Yeah,
first measure there is military power, then economy. What is our Indian economy size today? About $3 trillion.
that's
Where are
correct.
we headed? $5 trillion in the next few years. We
Correct.
no longer can think as an economy of one and a half, $2 trillion. We have to start looking at ourselves as $5 trillion. Don't forget, Russia is no longer a $5 trillion economy, not even a $3 trillion economy. It is a much smaller economy.
Yeah,
A lot of part of Russia is safeguarded in a way, if you will, because of Admiral Winter. Well, I'm just using the word General Winter and converting it to the naval side. So
Okay.
Admiral Winter freezes a fair amount of coastline of Russia.
Okay.
Therefore, where is it that they need the carrier? Either in the Pacific or in the Black Sea.
Yeah,
Not really anywhere else. They have no power projection left in the Mediterranean or in the Atlantic.
that's right.
Right. So one carrier for them is probably all right, but don't forget they are regretting having sold to China and even to India. That
Yeah.
is one of their deepest regrets.
I believe in between, possibly they wanted it back also from India. I don't know how far that is true, but they were raising the price of mineral gas cost so much that it was becoming very difficult for us to procure it. I mean, they were raising it every passing year.
That's correct. They did their best to deter us and said we'll
Mm.
raise the price so much, Kitum, you'll just give up and say, okay, keep it.
Keep it. That's right.
We were lucky, or we had good leadership that ensured that we did go ahead and paid the extra price.
Yeah.
But don't forget, so one part is the economic part.
Hmm.
If you have a $5 trillion economy, don't forget how much of trade will that entail.
Yeah.
98% of India's trade comes from the sea in some form or the other,
Iowa. Iowa.
through the IOR and through the sea. If you
That.
cannot control that trade, you are in trouble,
Hmm.
which is the reason why China is so desperately sending its ships off into the IOR region and trying to sustain them by taking bases at phenomenal costs. Think of Hambantota, how much money it has spent for what? A port which cannot be used which can be used commercially, but is no use today commercially. There
Correct.
is no tonnage that goes in there, right?
Yeah.
But they're still doing it because it gives them a foothold there.
Correct.
They're spending significant amount of money in Djibouti,
Hmm.
Gwadar, despite whatever is happening, despite the Baloch fighting their way through and killing so many people off and on, everywhere and there, they're still trying to invest. Similarly, the Karakoram Padi, this the road that they are trying to build from Pakistan into China, right? You can't imagine the benefits a carrier would give, and China wants a carrier battle group in the Indian Ocean region. So far, it just can't sustain. We will not talk about the rumors of Chinese carriers not being able to fly aircraft or not being able to do certain things. Let's leave
Yeah.
them where they are. Okay. So, one aspect of why we need a carrier is economy. The
Hmm.
second aspect is our technology. That's your national strength, right? Your
Yeah.
national power, technology. When you build a carrier, just think of the ecosystem that you're building around it. It's not just the carrier that is going in. From aircraft to metal cutting to shipping to equipment to so many other things that get into it. If you're going to do it by yourself, you're creating a huge manufacturing ecosystem. And if you can build a 45,000 ton carrier, you can easily build a 2 lakh ton merchant ship. Because the complexity of a 45,000 ton carrier is probably much more than that of a merchant ship. So you're
Yeah.
building areas, you're building your national power along with it. What else do you need? You need indigenization. That means you have to do things yourself. What we are doing today in terms of Atmanirbharta, I wish we had done it 20 years back or even 30 years back. We missed the boat at that time. But luckily, Navy was probably far ahead of the Army and the Air Force, and we were building frigates right from INS Nilgiri in 1960s, 1970s to date. We've been building a lot of ships ourselves, even if we got equipment or weapons from outside. And we were integrating Western sensors with Russian or Soviet weapons. That probably was
Yes.
the first time anybody ever did it. So Navy
Correct.
has this ability to do it. And if you can design a carrier, you can design a submarine, you probably can design virtually anything and everything you want. So that's the third aspect as far as your own national power is concerned. Right. What else forms the national power, if you will? It is energy. energy is important because we are dependent on imported energy, oil and gas that comes from the sea. We have to be able to safeguard that. No wonder India maintains one ship in the Red Sea for just safety and security of its shipping, which is coming through in that area. We maintain one ship on patrol 24/7, 365 days a year. We may
Okay.
well have to do one more ship in the Persian Gulf only for that purpose. So your energy is topmost or very important as far as we are all concerned, right? Trade is the last part of it. If you look at the Indian Ocean region, you will find all trade routes converge just south of India, and then they go into the Pacific Ocean. So anything that is coming from the Atlantic and going to the Pacific has to go past out here and the Malacca Straits. Therefore, if we can control these, we are controlling all of it. Now, what does India have in its favor? India has its ports, India has its coastline, and more importantly, the two island chains, the Lakshadweep Islands and the Andaman Islands. I've always said Andaman Islands is our third aircraft carrier, which cannot be sunk
Yes.
because we can position all those ships and aircraft that we would need, including weapon systems, in the Andaman and Nicobar, and that's exactly what we are doing with Port Blair and the Galathea Bay in the GNI, Greater Nicobar Islands, just at the southmost part where your cursor, just go where your cursor, yeah. So just the southmost island, the green dots that you see, that is where the Galathea Bay and the that's correct. That is where that's the Great Nicobar Island, and that is where you're going to have a big naval base with and a shipping base and so many other things coming up. Therefore, you have one unsinkable aircraft carrier here. You have a similar unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Lakshadweep, because that's the
That's
area where China is trying to make its inroads with Maldives. We already have treaties with nations in the further south from Madagascar and all that. So we have good treaties going on there in this Lakshadweep Islands, but no major naval base has come up in the Lakshadweeps yet. Okay.
correct.
We have a deal with our partners to be able to use the Reunion Island, which the US and France also use. So this is how we are trying to ensure that China, with a string of pearls, we have a string of diamonds, and we can countermand or take care of Chinese aggression from further away from there. And no wonder now you will realize that if you can project power in the eastern Indian Ocean region and the western Indian Ocean region at the same time, you need two carriers. And you can't have two carriers available to you 24/7, 365 days a year. You therefore need a redundancy with a third carrier.
Yeah, I mean that's true. That's true. Russian aircraft carrier actually got damaged because the crane fell down on the deck, and it is undergoing a refit now. It's undergoing a
Correct.
entire overhauling. So these equipment are liable to get damaged, and we need to be prepared for it. Thanks, Sudarshan. I think that was very well explained, that why we need the aircraft carrier. I will just add something to it, that look at these things. Look at the Persian Gulf. You have the US sitting there, and you have now the Chinese also trying to exert themselves. Look at the Red Sea. You have Djibouti, both US and China trying to influence this area. Plus, in the Red Sea, we also have one of our ships always present. Why? It is because that gives you the connectivity to the Mediterranean, and from Mediterranean you can go further up towards the Atlantic. So, and of course, the longer route which is there south of Horn of Africa, which is for which India also is playing smart. We have the Mauritius as one of our, I won't say bases, but yes, it's a island with a lot of Indian influence, and Reunion, you've already mentioned that we are trying to keep. Madagascar also, we have some arrangements. So I think everywhere there is a competition going between India, China, and America, or rather America, China, and India. India is the smaller player, but we have also our interests in these areas, and therefore to project our interest or secure our interest up to those distances, I think we need the aircraft carriers. I wish we had gone in for a nuclear powered aircraft carrier. That would have given us tremendous strength along with the nuclear powered submarines. That would have been something out of the world. A little bit of more, I should say, uh, risk taking ability from from the economic point of view would have done India that much better. But of course the government has its own compulsions. We will now go to the audience questions, because audience are also having a lot of questions, and we wanted to take the audience questions today rather than discussing ourselves. We will get most of the answers from the audience questions when we are answering them. So first question which is coming up is of Brigadier Rakesh Bhatia, and he says that Mridul asked on X, in my humble view, respected India should have four aircraft carrier for three surrounding seabeds, one for each, while one as reserve, supported by another 200 warships of varied capabilities. This is actually out of the textbook of the original naval plan. But you would like to say something about it, you can go ahead and say. Yeah.
I wish मृदुल आपके मुंह में घी शक्कर ये सच हो जाए. I wish it happens. Okay,
Initial
in
plan
the
was this.
Navy has
Initial plan was
the
this actually.
Navy. Yeah, it's absolutely the perspective plan did mention that we should have a Navy of 200 plus warships by the year 2025. We are
Correct.
very close, but we are not close to the 200 figure. We're much behind that. But the
That's
good
right.
thing, almost all the ships under construction, except for one, all ships under construction are being made in India. They're going to
That's
be made
that,
in India.
that is something very laudable and commendable for the Navy at least. I think they had the foresight
Absolutely.
and the
Absolutely. So, yes, a minimum of three aircraft carriers is mandatory. And I'm including the Andaman Nicobar as an unsinkable carrier, so it can become, by a stretch of imagination, खींच के four aircraft carriers. If I
that
had
would
my way, I would have had two more carriers plus a minimum of six nuclear submarines, both of the attack variety as well as the ballistic missile variety, SSNs and SSBNs, so that we could do sea control very, very effectively.
you can see the distance of Andaman Nicobar. It's almost hugging Indonesia and the Southeast Asian countries. So it is kind of a wall. It is kind of the Himalayas of the sea as far as India is concerned. मैं तो उसको वो नाम
Absolutely,
दूंगा.
Dushan. Actually, the Himalaya, the Andaman Nicobar is an extension of the mountains which are a part of the Himalayas that range that go through south from Myanmar. It's the same
Correct.
range going down, and that is why
Correct.
most of these islands are have got deep waters around it and very good natural harbors.
Okay, Sudarshan, we go to the next question. I think is from Samrat Ashok Patliputra, Bihar. The Indian Navy requires a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. Presently, the aircraft carriers in the Indian Navy are conventionally powered. This we had discussed in the passing. You may like to add something from your side.
Well, aircraft carriers today, all of us, all of them are, but the ones that we have are conventional, no doubts on that. A
Yeah,
nuclear powered aircraft carrier gives two advantages. One, it gives so much reserve power that you could even go in for the next generation weapons, which will have lasers, which will have so many other things that will come in without an additional requirement of power. The nuclear power carriers can do. Plus, a nuclear power carrier would become a much bigger carrier, more in the 75,000, 90,000 ton category. Therefore, from just 26 fighters, you will be able to get in more than 50, 60 fighters. That would, your one carrier group will be bigger than the Air Force and the Navy of many nations put together. So that power projection will be phenomenal. Please don't forget, where did the US fire its missiles on Afghanistan and also in Iraq from their submarines in the
Yeah,
Indian Ocean region, actually from the Arabian Sea area.
correct.
The only nation that ruled India, or the only people that ruled India and went back, were the British. Everyone
British.
who came from the land became a part of the society.
Yeah.
So we have to make ourselves secure at the sea, and for that, there is no option but an aircraft carrier, a nuclear part, even better.
This is also again similar question. When will Bharat get its first nuclear-powered aircraft carrier? This conventional versus nuclear-powered source difference was absent from the discussion during the launch of the second aircraft carrier. Your comments quickly, otherwise.
Well, very quickly, this was discussed, but very frankly, we did not have the capability of building a bigger carrier than this because of the limitations of the dry dock in Cochin. Today, also, we have now commissioned or about to commission a bigger dock, which will very conveniently build the 45,000, 40 odd thousand ton Vikrant follow up, but will have the capability of building the Vishal, which will be a 65,000 ton, hopefully.
Yeah. So, and actually, this was considered very seriously on 30th November by the Defense Acquisition Council, headed by Rajnath Singh ji. But because of economic, the mullahs, the mullah men, as I call them, people who control the money, they put their foot down, and that's how this proposal got turned down. I think another 3 4 years. He's asking for a timeline. I think in another 3 4 years down the timeline, you may have a in principle sanction, because even the third one which they have approved is a conventional one, a copy of what
It is
is
a
being.
follow up of Vikrant. It will be almost identical to Vikrant.
Absolutely. And this is going to take up to 2035. So maybe by
That's it.
2040 or so, possibly would be the next nuclear powered aircraft carrier. That's my
See, there is
conservative.
already the Naval Design Bureau or the D&D Directorate of Naval Design is already working on a nuclear aircraft carrier in the design part.
Yeah.
It takes a bit of time to go ahead.
This is about the Admiral
The
Kuznetsov.
Kuznetsov,
Kuznetsov. I find it very difficult to pronounce it, but anyway, it's it's burning garbage. Honestly, lol. It's always on fire or in dock for repair. Ab- Fellow, and he also corrected me by saying that the Indian economy is 4 trillion. Yes, of course. I think by mistake it may have come out of my speech as 3 trillion. I'm aware of it. That's 4 trillion economy, and we are quickly moving towards the fourth largest economy. Very small distance is left now. Then we
yeah, but
have
even if we maintain Dushyant at 2% of GDP, when the moment we are a 5 trillion or a 6 trillion economy, the
we'll
budget
have.
of the armed forces will increase by that much. And therefore, I do really speaking, don't think we'll have budgetary constraint by the time we hit that figure.
Yeah. So, but the timeline of 2035, 2040 is what we can actually, as of now, safely plan for, unless there is a chamatkar and we suddenly start galloping in the economy. Of course, time will tell.
Only
Next,
time will tell, absolutely.
next question is butter and chicken and naan. Talks of us getting a base in Djibouti. What's your opinion on this? Yeah, quick.
See, I do not think we are looking for a base in Djibouti because Djibouti is already, far too many people
People
have
are
got
there.
their bases there,
Yeah.
right? But we already have our ships and submarines regularly visiting Djibouti, and there we use the facilities of our partners. So I don't
Americans.
see any major reason why we must spend money and get a base there.
I see we are giving in return facilities to the Americans on our that logistics arrangement which has been made between
Yeah,
India and America. As part of that, the American ships are getting their logistics
turnaround
MRF
is happening here. And
MRO
don't forget, in
MRO.
the L&T shipyard, we had the American warship which was repaired very recently.
Yeah, MRO is being done there. So similar kind of an arrangement we can have with Djibouti. Sometimes it is smart not to spend money unnecessarily also, till the time we
Correct.
can. we become really big, we can go. I mean, we need not go. And after all, Mauritius, we have considerable influence. Madagascar, we have considerable influence. We should be able to look into this at a later time frame. Yeah, this is sir. Some guy, Ashley Tully, says India needs to have 75,000 tons aircraft, or else it will be anti-productive. What are your views? Yeah,
See, very frankly, even a 40,000 ton aircraft carrier of the Vikrant class, let's say, would carry 20, almost 20 aircraft, 20 fighters.
yeah,
20 fighters is bigger than the Air Force of Bangladesh. It also has ships which will go around it and standoff capability. The aircraft that will be there on Vikrant in due course will become the Rafale M, and thereafter the TED BF as it is called. By the year 2030, we'll have them in big numbers.
yeah.
And obviously, these aircraft will start operating from the other aircraft carriers of the Indian Navy also. So I don't really see that we are back as of now. But frankly speaking, let's face it, it's better to have a 40,000 ton aircraft carrier than not have one at all and
Not,
hope for a
not.
75,000 ton.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, the world's largest carrier is 100,000 ton, which is the Gerald Ford of the
Gerald Ford.
American. Yeah, so
Correct.
that is the upper limit of tonnage. The Chinese, the latest one which they have built is around 80,000 tons. So the Chinese are also quickly catching up with the Americans. Let's go to the next question, which is yeah, sorry, this one. Let me ask why historically, culturally, as an institution, our Indian Navy is far ahead than the Air Force and Army in making, developing, and using Bharat-made weapon system, ships, etc. Why the big difference? I think this is a very common question, and you should be able to answer it well. You had answered it in your initial discourse, but you can now focus upon it.
See, very frankly, the Navy has always been there because we were probably among the first to have a design bureau within the Navy itself. The design bureau was manned by naval officers who were trained in ship construction, and they were positioned at naval headquarters, and certain rules were circumvented or taken away for them. They could remain in one place for a longer time. So that's how the design thing started. And once you started with design thing, don't forget, Navy, one ship is like a city floating at one time. The entire thing that would happen in a city, from power generation to distribution, from cooking to garbage disposal, from people living to people working, from office to residence, everything is in one ship. That ship could be small, it could be big. Therefore, you had to have the ability to repair that ship at sea. You can't come back because the ship is at sea. And you can't float, you can't get so much logistic support or repair facilities at sea unless you make things yourself. And that is why the Navy went ahead. It was more probably out of need than out of something else. And that thing kept rubbing off, and the cumulative effect, or as they say, the waterfall effect, or the snowballing effect, whichever effect you like to call it, that has made Indian Navy's design team that much better, and we are where we are.
Actually, they started focusing quite early, and they had a lead of almost 2 decades over the other two services, and that has been probably one of the reasons why they evolved so fast. Now, possibly, we are trying to catch up, and it's becoming very difficult to catch up at this stage because a lot of changes are now taking place in technology. Next question is by Colonel RP Singh: Air Force needs more aircrafts to safeguard the marine approach. Also, would have enough striking zone. Then why fourth aircraft carrier? Don't we need powerful air and space to cover naval's need too? Yeah, basically he's saying that balanced kind of a development of air and space too. Your comments on this?
See, I agree with to some extent, but just think of it. How far will it, let's say even a 230 type of an aircraft go into the sea? It has a limit of 1100, 1200, 1500 kilometers. It has to come back. How much time will it spend there? If it has to spend long time there, a time on task is going to be, well, not manageable. Here, the aircraft has to be close enough to land. which means you have to, how will you manage the requirement of aircraft now when I need it? Therefore, an aircraft carrier is something which can launch an aircraft quickly enough. So, therefore, you cannot really depend on the Air Force. Let's also look at it like this: flying over the sea where there is no landmark, unlike of flying over land where there is landmarks, which you can visually see, are two different things. Flying over the sea, even in bad weather or in even a full moonlit night, there have been cases where aircraft have just gone into the sea, dived in, and thinking they are flying straight and level. It is a totally different ball game to fly over the sea. Not many Air Force pilots are comfortable flying over the sea. Therefore, you have to have people who can do it, and those people are naval guys in an aircraft carrier. The logic is exactly the same why the Indian Army wants helicopter gunships to be manned by Army officers.
Okay. The next question is by Aditya Kulsresht. Sir, there was a news no jet could fit into the lift of our new aircraft carrier except MiG-29. And are we receiving a Rafale M soon? Uh,
Well, trials have already been carried out about the Rafale M and it fits into the lift of the Vikrant without too many problems. It has happened. The problem was more with the American aircraft because the size was, it did not have foldable wings to the extent that they were required. If
okay.
the Rafale M does have foldable wings, so there's not a trouble out there.
Okay. Uh, there is a offbeat question. We will take it on later if time permits. This is again a question of further spiraling argument. Ask who put the foot down on nuclear powered aircraft carrier funding. For us undiplomatic Janta, please explain in Sadhan and Saral Bhasa who in government or foreign body did this action. Please explain. जेबी जी देखिए ऐसा है कि हम लोग वही बताते हैं जो कि न्यूज़ में बाहर आता है। अब अंदर कौन किसने क्यों किसी किसी प्रोजेक्ट को इस समय नहीं अप्रूव किया है। ये एक बॉडी होती है, कलेक्टिव बॉडी होती है, उसमें कलेक्टिव डिसीजन मेकिंग होती है, सब लोग अपने पॉइंट्स प्रोजेक्ट करते हैं। there is a financial advisor in every such committee, defense acquisition committee में भी होता है। so अब उसको आप किसी को पिन पॉइंट नहीं कर सकते हो, बट इतना मैं आपको अपने एक्सपीरियंस से जरूर बता सकता हूँ कि फाइनेंस एक मेजर कंसिडरेशन होता है और कई बार हमको ऐसी चीजें करनी पड़ जाती हैं जिसमें फाइनेंशियल कंस्ट्रेंट्स होते हैं। खाली डिफेंस ही नहीं है, बाकी भी नेशनल पावर के एलिमेंट्स होते हैं, उनको भी हमको स्ट्रेंथन करना होता है। एक बार याद होगा आर्मी ने अपना बजट फोरगो करके गोर्शकॉव को दिया था। जब गोश्त को
That's right.
खरीदने के लिए जब रशिया की कीमतें बढ़ाया जा रहा था तो हम लोगों ने किया ये कि हमने बोला ठीक है आप बजट मत कम करिए। आर्मी उस साल अपना बजट जो है नेवी को दे दी थी। उसी तरह से अगली बार आर्मी को जब जरूरत पड़ी थी टैंक्स वगैरह की तो नेवी ने अपना बजट कट कर दिया था। तो ये एडजस्टमेंट चलते रहते हैं, इसमें किसी को कोई ब्लेम करने की जरूरत नहीं है। आप प्लीज हर चीज को फॉरेन पावर से मत जोड़ के देखिए। आई थिंक इंडिया इज प्रोग्रेसिंग वेल। आई मीन इफ यू वांट टू ऐड एनीथिंग Sudarshan, you can do that.
Actually, I think you are absolutely correct. I have nothing really to add. And
Hmm.
कई बार होता है वो एक एडवर्टाइजमेंट नहीं होता था, ये अंदर
Hmm.
की बात है।
हाँ जी, बिल्कुल
ये वहीं
बिल्कुल।
पे छोड़ दीजिए।
Okay. Then we have next a very layman question, and I think this you should be able to answer it. It has a technical element to it. Can't solar power be used to certain extent to save the conventional fuel? होना चाहिए था. It's come as conversational fuel. So that it travels that much longer. What are the reasons? I mean, why it can't be harnessed?
See, to develop the power that you need to run a ship,
It's colossal,
you
too
will
much.
you will need so many solar panels going into layers and layers, and that ship will become so huge
Island
कि
हो
भैया
जाएगा.
भैया ये हमसे ना हो पाई।
Yeah, I mean the
राइट।
target will become too big, too easily it will be detected. So कई इसीलिए न्यूक्लियर पावर को क्यों वो करते हैं, छोटा से उसमें लंबी सी बात हो जाती है ना। तो that is one of the reasons why why we can't use, but maybe टेक्नोलॉजी यू कांट से एनीथिंग, अगर फ्यूचर में कोई टेक्नोलॉजी आती है जिसमें पैनल्स छोटे से काम चल जाएगा और पावर आउटपुट ज़्यादा होगा, रिसर्च हो ही रही है, हर फील्ड में रिसर्च हो रही है, हो सकता है इन फ्यूचर इट मे बी, इट्स लाइक मैनेजमेंट में एक वो होता है, एक प्रोसीजर होता है कि भाई फ्यूचर में क्या होने वाला है, उसको बोलते हैं डेल्फी टेक्निक। फ्यूचर 40 साल बाद टैंक कैसा होगा, तो उसमें कुछ एक्सपर्ट्स होते हैं, वो अपना एक इमेजिनरी फ्लाइट करते हैं और वो सोचते हैं कि भाई टैंक किस तरह का होगा या शिप किस तरह की होगी, और फिर उसके बाद लोग एक प्लान बनाते हैं। तो इस तरह का भी एक रूट फॉलो हो सकता है, देखिए आगे क्या होता है। आई थिंक वी लीव इट एट दैट। देन we have too many questions today. Good, yeah. I mean, this is what I like, that we are unable to take all the questions. This is again, I wanted to pick up Samrat Ashok Patliputra. Can the Tejas aircraft serve as interceptor on aircraft carriers?
Well, there is a naval Tejas which has already
Hmm.
been designed. Please
Correct.
understand, एक छोटे से हवाई जहाज का डेक which is a few hundred meters in length has to the aircraft has to land there, an aircraft which is otherwise landing on a strip which is a few thousand meters in length. Therefore it uses a tail hook. A tail hook जो है, it has to be so heavily strengthened that it has to decelerate an aircraft from a few hundred kilometers per minute per hour to zero in a distance of less than 500 meters. Imagine
Okay.
the
So,
deceleration that is required, the strength of the hook that is required. And that is why the problem comes in that a normal aircraft which is landing on ground cannot land at sea. Now, to add to the complexity, the aircraft carrier is floating on water. The water is not a stable medium, which means the aircraft carrier is also not a stable platform. It is greatly stable, but is not as stable as land under any by any stretch of imagination. So, therefore, those complexities also have to be kept in mind at landing. So, an advancement or a further development of the Tejas is what is coming as the TED-BF, because the Navy wanted a twin-engined fighter to be able to be used on a aircraft carrier. Essentially, because if one engine goes, at least the aircraft can come back to land on the carrier with one engine. That is where the TED-BF came in. In an emergency, the Naval Tejas has already carried, by emergency, Naval Tejas has already landed a number of times on Vikrant. It has landed a number of times on Vikramaditya. So that way there is no trouble of the naval Tejas landing there, not the normal Tejas.
yeah. Okay. Let's go to the next question, which is um, by Butter and Chicken. We have seen the use of naval drones, $75,000, attacking and heavily damaging Russian corvette. Not sure about details. How will the emergence of naval drone affect future? Basically,
Well,
he's also reflecting to, can it affect the aircraft carriers also or not? That's an indirect question, I suppose.
see, it's
Yeah.
the same thing as, well, where did this aircraft, the naval drone, come from? These are all, smallish vessels which are small in their radar cross section, packed with weapons, packed with ammunition or TNT or dynamite or whatever, and they come and hit a vessel. An aircraft carrier is a few thousand miles away from the coast. For a drone to reach there, it has to be reasonably big. It won't be a $75,000 drone anymore. Or it has to be launched by a vessel which can carry it. Vessel meaning it could be a ship, it could be an aircraft also. But whichever vessel launches it, the aircraft carrier with the fleet that it goes along with would be able to detect that and knock it off even before that guy can launch. Therefore, while drones is the future, and don't also forget the Indian Navy is already looking at drones that can be positioned on aircraft carriers, not aircraft carriers, even the Halo carrier, which we are trying to helicopter dock ship that we are trying to buy now, or the RFP will be out soon, will be able to launch hail and mail category type of, that is high altitude, long endurance, medium altitude, long endurance drones, also drones equipped with weapons from their decks. We are
Okay.
already looking at, you know, a TED BF along with the Cat's Warrior type of a configuration where you can have an unmanned aircraft and or an unmanned drone looking at as a buddy with a aircraft. So lot many things are going on. These are things that are being worked out. We probably will see some of it happening in the next 2 years.
Okay. The A bit off topic, but with the increasing capacity of Cochin shipyard, all thanks to Navy, preferring homegrown. How do you see the basically he's looking at export possibilities of India in this field. Even Mesgon Dock is producing a lot of ships now. Of course, not of the variety, big variety, but they are also doing a great job of it. So,
Why only Mesgon Docks, Cochin shipyard, the Goa shipyard, the Garden Reach in Calcutta,
yeah.
right? So butter
I-
chicken and naan. Please understand, who do you think manufactures the most fishing vessels or small or vessels of the small size in and around India, Indian Ocean region? You'll be surprised the answer. Bangladesh, right? In terms of number, Bangladesh makes them more. What is India trying to do to take over this part? In the Galathea Bay, in the Great Nicobar Islands, we are trying to have a shipyard which will make these smaller boats, so that
okay,
we take some part of the business away from there. Because don't forget, whatever we do, it has to be economically viable.
correct.
We are not that kind of a country which can sink money without economic viability.
Absolutely. You see, I can tell you my own personal experience. I have seen factories used for defense production lying unutilized for over 5, 5, 6, 6, 8, 8 months. The entire assembly lines are not doing anything. The workers are just sitting around taking pay. Why? Because the kind of equipment which they produce is specialized, so it can't be used in the commercial markets of ours. The specifications for which we produce were essentially the Russian origin equipment, so we could not sell it to the Western Bloc. The Eastern Bloc, in any case, was relatively not that well off to buy equipment produced in India, and maybe there was some quality issues as well. So overall, I found at least 3, 4 factories wherever I went. I mean, they were PSUs lying idle. So we have to look at all these things, and then go in for what you're saying. But yes, I think possibility to hai hai jo aap bol rahe ho.
See, we've just presented one ship, INS Kirpan, to
Hmm.
Vietnam. Last year, this happened. Okay, what are
Correct.
the objective? It's to show that, look, this is how good our naval manufacturing is come by, we can
Yeah.
ask us to make. We're giving them a
Yeah.
line of credit. We are doing
Yeah.
exactly the same with so many other countries around us.
Yeah.
Okay, objective is
uh,
exactly the same.
yeah, there is the next question which is there is, ask sir, why are we not focusing on the over the horizon radar, as it will help Navy and Air Force alike, as it could be used for stealth jet monitoring, and as it can see air displacements.
Well, over the horizon radars are already in existence with us.
No, that's what I was.
No naval radar is of a range of less than 250 nautical miles.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah,
long range warning radars are all there, while your horizon is just 12, 13, 15 nautical miles off. So that's
and
already there.
and there are
Okay.
these aerial platforms also,
Aerial
Orion
platforms, drones, satellites.
satellites. So I think they are being integrated into the overall war plans. If there are any specific issues, you could come back to us. We would like
But
to.
specifically, let me put it like this: I'll be very, very shocked and surprised if this is not already happening. But don't forget, we have an Indian Ocean monitoring cell, which is the
Hmm.
equivalent of what was used to be in Singapore, in Gurgaon, in India.
Yeah,
And we don't even have just Indian officers there. There is an American, British, French, Singaporean Navy. There is an Australian guy plus a Japanese guy. So many people there. The
correct.
objective is to be able to track almost every vessel in the Indian Ocean region. And that is how we know what China is doing, because we track every ship, every thing which has any Chinese, Pakistani, or any of our dear friends' footprints on it.
Yeah. There's another question uh, Shre- uh, from Shreyas S. Asked, does India have large passenger commercial boats? I think he must be referring to the amphibious boats because we really don't require commercial boats. But you can answer, I am not aware of it.
See, large commercial boat means a passenger liner.
Yeah,
Right. We
which
already have them which are commuting or taking people from Chennai to the Andamans, or from Kolkata to Andamans, or from
Hmm,
Kochi to Laccadives. They are already in existence. We already
correct,
have ferries or huge, even pleasure craft which starts from Bombay and take you to Laccadives and get you to Cochin. And these are as big as ocean liners. So they're already there. They exist. You can actually have a cruise on some of them.
correct. We have a kind of a question which I'm tempted to put it up in the thing, but I'll leave it at that. I don't want to get into the internal dynamics of our procurement systems. Uh, we'll leave it to, I mean, people would have read the comments of JBJB. You can make your own conclusions out of it. But yes, everything has, wherever there is smoke, कुछ तो होता है वहाँ पे, ऐसी चीजें होती हैं. But that's a very important question which needs to be understood by our audience. Aircraft carriers for main floating base for aggression. Basically, aircraft carriers are main floating base for aggression. Are we changing our national approach? Basically, it's telling, are we going from safeguarding our territory from a defensive to an offensive power projection mode? I don't think so. You can answer it. How best? Uh, what
I
is our
don't
national?
think we are changing our national approach. What we are doing is we are being a little more proactive than what we used to be. We used to be totally reactive earlier. We're just being proactive. Like I said, the Navy is designed to deter tomorrow's war.
Absolutely.
It is not for it's also for fighting today, but deter tomorrow's war. And if you
Correct.
have aircraft carrier, you're just ensuring nobody comes there. That's it.
There
Look at the
there are
way.
two. Correct. There are two things which on which the Navy is kind of बोलते हैं ना लास्ट वर्ड है. एक तो जो ट्रायड का जो तीसरा ट्रायड है वो होता है
It's
नेवी
not
के
like
पास और उसको उसको ढूंढना बहुत मुश्किल होता है. इसीलिए बोलते हैं ना कि सबमरीन को ढूंढ लिया तो आपने बहुत बड़ा काम कर लिया. तो उधर
correct.
ट्रायड के लिए जरूरी है और वो किस लिए यूज होता है? डेटरेंस के लिए. एयरक्राफ्ट कैरियर इज अ शो ऑफ पावर कि अगर कुछ करोगे तो हम ठोकेंगे आपको. खाली लैंड से नहीं, सी से
समुद्र
भी
से
ठोकेंगे, समुद्र से भी ठोकेंगे. तो ये एक डेटरेंस मैसेजिंग जाती है आपके एडवर्सरीज के लिए. चाइना का कुछ भी एसेट अगर इस पार्ट में है और चाइना के जो शिपिंग जो उनकी जो फोर्स है यहाँ अगर नहीं पहुंच पाती है तो उसको तो हमारे स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनर के साथ मिल करके धो देंगे हम लोग. अगर
absolutely,
हमारे पास एक एयरक्राफ्ट कैरियर होगा तो पावर प्रोजेक्शन नहीं, सिक्योरिंग ऑफ इंटरेस्ट इज व्हाट वी शुड टॉक अबाउट, आई थिंक.
absolutely correct.
Uh, then I think we are coming now to our end. We had thought of finishing it, but there are so many questions. I thought we should answer them because people are really asking very intelligent questions. Thank guys. I think you people have uh, uh, really taking interest in picking our brains. Why has the submarine strength of Indian Navy declined over time, and how many nuclear submarines does the Indian Navy require? You are a
Okay, this is an
submariner.
interesting question.
I kept this as the last question so that you can answer it,
Okay.
and then we'll call it off.
See, the Indian Navy submarine strength has declined over time for multiple reasons, and ये अंदर की बात है. Let's leave it there. Frankly, we had a lot of requirement, and Navy was always very greedy in terms of indigenization. That is why
Correct.
the project 75, 75I, just think of the requirements of 75I. Most countries are unwilling to give those technologies that we want, and we've
Correct.
been not budging on it. Right. So that is where it happened. Many times you have perspective plans, you made those plans, they have been approved by the government also, but you do not have the right budget at the right time. Now, how many submarines, nuclear submarines the Navy require? Depending on who you ask, you'll get an answer which is anything between 12 and 16. What is India doing about it? There is already a required, you have the Arihant class and the follow up of that, which will be a six boat class.
Yeah.
There is the next generation of nuclear the submarines, जिसके छह सबमरीन बनने का प्लान है. But France, when it's offering its pump jet technology, they said we will give you this technology only if you give us assured greater orders than the Project 76. So there is a
Correct.
thought of putting in the pump jet technology, and you might expand the nuclear boat numbers. So let's wait and watch.
Yeah, I mean, the plans were there to make these submarines. There were international agencies also approached, but somehow it's not taken off vis-a-vis the other requirements of the Navy and also the Defense Forces. There, I would have finished here, but there is the viewer of ours, the regular viewer, who insists that I must ask this question to you. Why do you have clacks as your क्या बोलते हैं
Nickname.
nickname? Because सर आंसर कर दो.
नहीं, अच्छा ग्लैक्स नहीं,
वो
ग्लैक्स
चैक्स
वाला
है.
क्वेश्चन सी चैक्स है. अच्छा, JP, I'll tell you the actual story is my name is Sudarshan Chakrapani. My surname
Yeah.
doesn't exist in it. When I landed up at NDA, वहां पे नेम टैली में 13 लेटर्स से ज्यादा नहीं रखे जा सकते थे. तो आई हैड टू शॉर्टन इट टू एस चक्रपाणी. एस
Yeah.
चक्रपाणी में लोगों ने कहा यार ये चक्रपाणी जो है ये बहुत लंबा नाम है, इसको छोटा करो. तो
Correct.
छोटा किया गया, किसी ने चक्कर बोला, किसी ने चैक्स बोला. Somehow
Checks.
लोगों को टैक्स ज्यादा अच्छा लगा, and that has what has remained there since probably third term or fourth term NDA. मोटा मोटी तकरीबन 40 साल से ज्यादा हो गए. अब मुझे इस नाम के अलावा दूसरा नाम याद ही नहीं आता अपना.
Correct. So that's it, viewers. Thank you very much. I think we need to do another program on the Navy because there are many other questions which were left out, and because of lack of time, and we have to go somewhere together. And incidentally, Chucks is also in Lucknow. So, Jai Hind, and please like, subscribe, watch our videos, share it as far as possible. Do contribute to our organization so that we can bring you some more better videos. We have our QR code on the screen. Make full use of it, and encourage us by giving so many questions, that we are actually finding it difficult to match up with the kind of question, and they are still pouring in. Thank you very much, Jai Hind, and thank you, Checks.
Thank you very much, Dushyant. It was a pleasure. Thank you all. Please do like, subscribe, forward this in your groups, in your with your friends, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you, Dushyant. Pleasure.
Definitely.
Jai Hind.
Definitely. Jai Hind.